Hello, everyone. Just want to welcome you once again to a Credit Safe webinar. We're excited to be back with you this week and have some great webinars this week and some great guests. Before we get started, I want to let you know, just as always, you are always asked and encouraged to participate with us in these discussions. We really do want this to be a discussion. It is not just us talking at you. We want to talk to you and with you. So the way you do that is at the bottom of your Zoom screen there, you will see two little text bubbles with Q&A above it. Just go ahead, type that in. I am monitoring that the entire time, and we'll take any questions you have, any thoughts that you want to share, what have you, and deal with that, whether it's something that I need to say or something that we need to ask our presenter, our speaker, whatever goes on, we'll kind of work through it together and make that all happen. My name is Nathan Kolb. I am the brand engagement guy here for Credit Safe. And it's my pleasure most of the time, not always, but most of the time, to host these webinars. So it's a great time for me, and I enjoy getting to come to you guys and talk with you each and every week, and of course, talk to our speakers. And talking about our speakers, I want to introduce to you Katie Keach. Katie has over a decade of experience in the commercial credit and collections industries. She started out as an AR specialist and then rose to the director of credit and collections, where she helped her company grow from a franchise with under $5 million in total revenue to a global logistics organization with over $1.5 billion in revenue. Katie was responsible for building out the collections department, training sales and credit associates to work together across the country for that group. She established the credit policy, achieved credit losses, and get this, you credit professionals out there, you'll appreciate this. She established the credit policy, which achieved those credit losses at one point of 0.3%, so 0.3% on revenues of $650 million. So an incredible record there. She was a 5-time winner for that organization of their Special Recognition for Outstanding Performance Award. And most recently, she held the role of Vice President for Inside Arm, where she built out an entirely new division for that particular group. When she's not being awesome at doing her job there or educating other companies on how to reduce their credit losses without sacrificing sales or revenue, she spends her time with her husband and daughter at their home in Pennsylvania. So obviously these folks that we've been having on, we've been fortunate to have just amazing professionals coming on, and Katie is one of the best, and we just can't thank her enough for coming on. So thanks, Katie. Hopefully that was a good enough introduction for you.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thanks, Nathan. Always a pleasure.
Always. So I'm looking forward to this. This is a unique topic. It's not something that we hear a lot when we, normally when we're talking about sales and credit and collections, there's kind of an odd or unique, maybe we'll say, dynamic that goes on in most organizations. Why don't you explain that, since this is your talk? Why don't you explain kind of that relationship that generally happens between sales and credit/collections?
Yeah, well, thank you again. So one of the big things that I've noticed is that they almost feel like they're competitors to each other, right? So it's, hey, if I'm not bringing on business, it's because collections or credit is holding me back. And I think that's a very big misconception in most organizations, and something that I'm here to talk about today to really help to improve how to go about improving that relationship, how to work on the dynamics of that relationship, and how early you can work on improving that relationship out of the gates.
And where do you think that comes from? I mean, we hear that. I mean, I've heard that on the last 4 webinars running. We've heard that kind of that back and forth between sales and collections and everything. But where do you think that really comes from? I've asked this a couple of times. I like hearing different folks, their opinion on it.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. I personally think it starts at the top. I think I've been into a lot of different organizations, especially in the last year and a half. I worked with the 4th largest company in the world last year at the end of the year, working with their group. And I noticed that they had a very different dynamic, but again, much of the same echoed. Their sales, credit, and collections, they don't work together. They work against each other. So, but I've been in good organizations and seen where it starts at the top in a great way and has a great impact on the bottom line. So I think the answer to your question is, in my opinion, it starts at the top.
Okay. Won't let you dive in any deeper there. I don't want to get anybody in trouble here. We don't need to call out names, but
That's exactly right.
I get what you're saying. It does, that attitude can start at the top and be passed down through stories or side comments or all those type of things that can sometimes be detrimental to that overall. Yeah, I totally get where you're going with that. So you talk about, these different things that are going on. You talk about that. Give us kind of like an overview of what in your mind is a really good interacting credit collections group and sales group. Like, how does that look in your mind? Like, if we could go to Katie's Utopia company, what would that look like?
So the best answer to that question, I think, is a common understanding of each other's goals and initiatives, and really basically looking at it from a perspective of I, at the credit and collection side, want to help you succeed, but I want to do it in a way that has a compounding effect. So let me educate you. Let's look at why this deal isn't one we want to spend our time and resources on. And let's not be afraid to walk or say no to a deal. I found in my over 15 years of experience doing that, and some of my closest friends, just so you know, are top producers in organizations across the country in sales. And they are because they really understood that it was okay to walk away from business and to say no. And I know some of them are probably even listening to this today and throwing some thumbs up, because that was probably the biggest thing that they learned from me, was that if you can just have higher standards and not be willing to do business with everybody, you're going to have a much higher trajectory as it relates to your sales revenue and ability to grow in your organization.
Okay. Now, I've done my homework, as any good host should, and I've read some of your stuff and listened to some of your other webinars, and you and I have met in person, and we've talked and had a meal together and all of that. So I've heard some of what you talk about as you go through all of this. And one of the things that I've noticed you talk about a lot is this idea of due diligence and how that affects not only your front end, but also your back end on that credit losses side and all of those different things. Do you want to explain that a little bit more? Because I think it kind of goes into that relationship, that utopian relationship that you're talking about, the best way for these two things to interact.
Yeah, absolutely. So due diligence, when I'm talking about that, I'm really focusing on the fact of what are you looking for out of a customer? And then what is your customer looking to get out of the relationship with you? So it's making sure that you're not, again, accepting all business or all leads as good leads, looking at setting a standard of, I want to go to market. This is the type of customer I'm looking for. Not everybody, not all square pegs are going to fit into round holes, but I think it's important to have a set of standards, right, that you're comfortable with in extending and looking at and say, you know what, it just doesn't feel right. I want to have business that's going to be here 6 weeks, 6 months now. And I think that's probably the biggest key, which is when I'm looking at the sales group and I'm saying, hey, I want you to go focus on these leads or these new opportunities. Don't give them the whole kit and caboodle. Be selective in who you want them to go after, because that will in turn help you to have stickier, more compounding revenue in the long run.
Okay, so you're talking about doing that due diligence on the research side, and then credit and collections handing over, hey, these are our best customers. These are the folks that we don't have to go after to find payments from, and they're paying us on time. Their DBTs are great, like all of that type of stuff. And go find us more of these. Like go clone these companies for us.
Absolutely. So what I encourage my clients to do is to set their appetite for risk. Right now we've got good, right? So I would say that we're not in growth mode, we're in survival mode in a lot of places. So our appetite for risk is going to be on the lower side. But when you're in growth mode, you've got a high appetite for risk. And what I mean by that is you're going out, you're using credit tools like the Credit Safe program, a big proponent of pulling credit on leads, and making sure that you are not just accepting every customer or every lead as an opportunity. You're kind of putting them in that high, medium, and low bucket and saying, hey, I don't have that appetite for high risk right now. I'm in that medium to low, and these are the customers I want to go after. So I am saying run your prospects through a lead generation tool, do some research, have standards, and then look at, giving your sales group the ability to prospect those leads strategically, because those are the ones we want to bring on and we want to put our time and energy.
Right. Okay. And this really kind of runs contrary to what you're saying, kind of runs contrary to the for lack of a better term, the us versus them type mentality that we see a lot of times out there. How do you suggest businesses to combat that? I mean, it's there. We know it's there. We joke about it all the time, tongue in cheek, and maybe not because we don't know how to deal with it. How do you think that we should deal with that?
Yeah. So I encourage credit and collections professionals and even sales folks to just have that conversation direct and head on, and to say, listen, I want to see you succeed. I can't tell you how many people in my sales, travels and even when I was a credit and collections professional, that I said, I want to see you succeed. I want to see you on the golf course on a Wednesday or on a Friday. I want to see you have the long weekends. But if you and I can have some synergy and have a good communication line, we can make these decisions together. And really the important part is together. It's not me saying, you can't do this deal, it's not allowed. It's saying, hey, here's what I'm seeing. I don't recommend going after this customer. Here's why. Let's put our time and energy over here with this customer, and let's grow this opportunity. It's going to be here long term. Sure, you could hit the sales charts. You could, in a 6-week run up, but that customer is going to fall off. They're going to attrit. They're going to go out of business, whatever it may be. They're just not a good fit for us. Let's not go through that whole relationship of the roller coaster, right? Up and down.
Yep.
And let's look at bringing on business that's going to stick with us, grow with us, not be on the hamster wheel running.
Sure. Well, we just talked about it in a recent webinar where, the sale's actually not complete until that check has cleared, until that, until it's been collected on and that AR has been resolved. And so I completely hear what you're saying there, that they've got to see the whole cycle. Is there a way to get these different departments and these different groups to be able to see that a little bit better, that you would suggest for companies, so that they can see that life cycle that you're talking about a little bit better?
Yeah, so I think that one of the big things that was really early on in my career, something that I did right out of the gates, was I shared my goals. So I shared my goals from a credit and collections perspective, and I could see and appreciate what the sales goals were at the same time. And so we were able to work together to decide, listen, there's going to be times where it could go either way, right? I'm not going to sit here and lie to everybody on this call and say it's black and white always. In fact, it's mostly gray. But it's being able to work together towards which is the gray we want to bring on and how, and being able to understand each other's goals and initiatives. As you can see, I had very tight bad debt and very tight credit losses, but we also had very high scale and revenue goals. And so it's a healthy push versus pull is probably the best way to say it. I wasn't afraid at times to kind of put my recommendation aside to say, you know what, I'm willing to roll the dice on this one. And honestly, Nathan, that came with sometimes asking for an on-file payment method as a backup, some skin in the game from the prospect or the customer side to say, hey, you meet me halfway, I'll meet you halfway, and let's see if we can set this up for success. And it went, as you can tell, very, very well.
Can you expound on that a little bit and talk about maybe some of those other skin in the game things that you used or you suggest that companies do that help a credit department be a little more comfortable with maybe a slightly higher risk tolerance and allow sales to close some of those deals that maybe took a little bit longer, took some serious effort, and have that higher growth, that higher revenue potential?
Yeah, absolutely. Another great question. So what I think that most people need to understand is you want to have vendor references that you can call on, and not just vendor references you can call on in the beginning, but people, I can't tell you how many times I'd pull back my credit application and say, hey, to the credit analyst, give those guys a call. Let's just see how they're paying them when things might have looked different than what I was used to seeing, right? So I would say credit references and a really good detailed credit reference sheet. I can't tell you how many times I had conversations with CEOs or CFOs, and I really shared where we were at, what we were looking to do. So having a direct conversation at the decision maker level, as a credit analyst or as a director of credit and collections, I wasn't afraid to pick up that phone and say, let's have a business conversation. Let's figure out what terms you need, what I'm willing to extend, and how we can have a mutually agreed upon relationship at gates. And then also, if it was necessary, I did ask for prepayment. I would say, listen, looking at things, there's some red flags here. I want to do business with you, but I'm going to need some prepayment for the next 60, 90 days. Once we have a solid, 60, 90 days of good payment history with you, I think we can go forward with giving you some terms. And again, it's just that, hey, meet me halfway in the middle. And other times I'd even look at deposits. I look at security deposits, 1 month of, average weekly volume that was going to be projected just as a security, to keep on file. And again, we'd keep that around 120 to 180 days and then return it. And I can't tell you how many relationships we were able to do that others weren't, because we were willing to have those uncomfortable. I didn't think they were uncomfortable. I'm not gonna lie. I actually really enjoy those conversations.
Right.
And they turned out to be long-term relationships. These are people who I had direct conversations with that I was able to help during the last recession, and they stayed with us. Somebody may have knocked on the door with better pricing or better service, but they were like, you know what? I really appreciated what that credit collections team did with us when we had tough times or when we were onboarding, and we're going to stay with them. And that stuff really, I think, is undervalued, underestimated when it comes to the credit collections world.
Absolutely. Yeah. As a former business owner, I can attest to that type of a thing where when we had those times where, and everybody has them, where something gets a little lean, something gets a little crazy, somebody else defaults on a payment and you get stiffed and those type of things, being able to call up some folks and be like, look, I promise you will get your money. You just need to give me a little extra time or whatever. And being able to come through on that, of course, that makes a difference, adds to that. But then by doing that, had a customer for life. I was not going anywhere else. As long as they kept that up, I was going to stick with them because they understood. And like you said, it's a building of a relationship. And that's been a theme for any of you that have been watching and several of these webinars, you'll know. I think everybody that's come on here, especially with all that's going on with this pandemic and everything, everybody has been saying, build those relationships. If you haven't already, start now. Start building those relationships because it's what's going to see you through to the end. Whether it's the end of your career, the end of this pandemic, the end of your company, whatever it is, it's going to see you through to the end and carry you successfully through all of it. So I love that you're just echoing that, but I love some of those examples too. I mean, getting creative with those folks and doing that. Did you have a lot of pushback from folks saying like, well, no, I'm just not going to give you a deposit or whatever, or were they willing to kind of work with you most of the time?
So I know this is probably going to be a surprise to most people listening in. I was given what I needed 95% of the time. 5% of the time there was pushback. And I'll be honest with you, it was one of those smell tests, right? If they're pushing back here, chances are there was a reason they were pushing back. And I just wasn't able to make it work. And again, I was able to have the salesperson be on that conversation with me. So it was a learning opportunity for them as much as it was me having the direct conversation. Probably something
so you would have the salesperson on the call with you. Okay.
Yeah, we're a united front. Again, when you're talking about getting rid of that us versus them mentality, we have to be a united front. It can't be, oh, well, the salesperson told me I had net 45, but your terms are net 15. No. We want to be giving you net 45 and we want to be giving them to you together, not opposite of each other. Right. And I think that, you got to have the 3-strike rule. And 3-strike rule is the controllable strikes, right? Payment terms are a big one, credit limits, another one. And I would say basically invoicing is my third one, which is you go wrong in any of those 3 areas out of the gates, chances are the customer's going to leave you faster. And so if you can be united, onboard the customer with what they need, it's a customer for life, like you said.
Right. Okay. Very cool. Well, I want to kind of summarize what we've said here in a second. Before we get too much further here, but I do want to remind everybody, as we're starting to get towards time and starting to get towards the end of this webinar and everything like that, and it goes fast when there's a nice conversation going back and forth, there is the opportunity to ask questions. Katie is great at taking questions off the cuff and, feel free to ask anything and everything under the sun. No, I mean, anything revolving around this type of world. Definitely feel free to ask those questions. I will catch them here as soon as I get done with this next question. But I want to let you know that's open. It's ready. We do have time for that here. But you've talked about this, Katie. You've said before it's been in the write-up of what we wrote for this thing and everything, that this is kind of this magic potion. It's the magic of the relationship, whatever you want to call about. Yeah, I know you're like, yeah, I said that, and now people just associate it with me, right? And I see that look, right? Yeah. So I get where you're going with that though, and how that seems to make sense. the question I have with that is, you've talked about this whole thing and the relationships, and you could do this and you could do that and all these things. Can you kind of boil it down to that recipe for the secret sauce? Can we go in and give those 3 points or those 5 points to the secret sauce that, if you put these ingredients together, you're going to get a good result?
Yeah, absolutely. So first one is how we generate the leads and who we give them to, right? We talked about prospecting, making sure that we're not just going after all leads are good leads. Second one is also having a mutual understanding after we've done the lead generation and we're now closing. What does the customer need from us to have a successful relationship? What payment terms? What's their weekly volume going to look like? What credit limit are we comfortable extending? And when can we expect payment? And that's a really important one, to making sure that you have a dialogue with them that says, I want to give you the terms that is not going to require my collections team to call you. So what is going to be the way that we can make sure we understand what you need and we understand what we need so we can go forward. Right. And then it's having that relationship with your salesperson to say, okay, we understand what they need. We can give it to them, but you need to understand these are my expectations. So if we don't see, if we see 5 times the volume, but we're not comfortable with 5 times the volume, we need to be aware that we may need to pull back the credit limit or go have a different conversation, right? And so that's that. When you're working together as a team, that's the magic. The magic is when you're talking to each other, you're not getting senior management involved in what I call referee matches, because you mutually understand each other and you're working together to bring on that customer in the best way possible. And the compound effect is where you see it in the revenue. So now we're bringing on customers that are with us. We're not running on a hamster wheel to replace a attrited business. We're keeping our existing business, building on that structure, and now bringing on new business in the same format. And that's where that compounding revenue can help you scale dramatically quickly. Let me share that.
Gotcha. Sounds great. And just a heads up for all of you out there that are listening that were trying to write that down feverishly or what have you, type those notes. You will be getting a follow-up email from us just thanking you for being here, and it will contain a link to this recorded webinar. So you will be able to use it again. You'll be able to go back through it. You can share it with colleagues. We would love for you to share the wealth, so to speak, in this. So we have a few different questions here that are coming in. Feel free, as I'm asking and Katie's answering these questions, to do even more, folks. Don't feel like you can't. First one, Mary says you're amazing. So thank Mary, and then we'll go on to her question.
Thank you, Mary.
And now she says she would like you to talk a little bit more about how long you see this risk, this higher risk that you were talking about, this higher risk environment that we're in right now. How long do you think it's going to last? What can folks do? That kind of thing. Give them maybe a COVID overview.
Yeah, so I really wish I had my magic 8 ball today, but if I'm being honest, I think the answer is about 18 months, and possibly 18 to 24. So I think we need to be using our credit tools that are out there. Like I said, I'm a huge proponent, and Credit Safe is not paying me to say this. I'm a huge proponent to using their tool on the front end of lead generation, using it with onboarding, using it while the customers are on board 4 times a year, checking to see, is my customer having any change effect? And then making sure that I'm watching my book of business. So 18, 24 months, I think we need to tighten the credit policies, and we need to be, working together to onboard new business. Great question. And thank you, Mary.
All right. So we have another one. Tara here is asking, how effective were you at collecting internationally? Because she's having some challenges with Mexico right now.
Actually, I did get to experience collecting internationally. My company did air, ocean, and freight for international. So I got to collect in all sorts of different countries. And yes, the dynamic of the cultures can be very different. In Mexico, particularly, they like to do cash. So I would give them your wire instructions. They don't do a lot of credit tracing. And my best success there is just to have a conversation with them and say, hey, I notice things are tight. We're not seeing the payments that we're used to. Can we work out a payment plan to ensure that we're getting you guys current and keeping you with us long term?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Another one here. What are some icebreakers you use to bridge the gap between the two groups? So I'm guessing sales and credit here, to begin to build those relationships that haven't existed prior to you coming to an organization?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say putting the leadership in a room. So I was privy to being at our director meetings, at our annual meetings, where I really got to what I call get on stage. We did have stages, but to do a presentation and to share my goals and to have open dialogue. I really made sure that the sales force knew what I was looking to hire and build depth behind me. So it wasn't just everybody came to me. That's not the solution. Directors of credit collections cannot have the entire sales force calling only them.
Right.
So it's really building that depth behind me or behind like me, to have people that are like-minded, thinking the same, educating the same, and creating a culture of that. And I believe that starts at senior management in the C-suite.
Sure. Okay. Marianne, I hope that answers your question. If you have any more, please send them in. We got another one here. How do you convince sales reps that a sale is not a sale until the debt is recovered? Jason wants to know.
Jason, that's a great question. So I'll give you as a two-part answer. One, I think that you have to have skin in the game, not only from the customer, but also from your sales force. So oftentimes there'll be commission chargebacks or paid margin, those type of things that you can institute at the senior management level to have sales, have care. I actually didn't have either one of those. So I'm going to speak from being on the other side, which is just educating them and getting them all the education that you can by having those opportunities to, I think, 2000 and I don't know what year it was, but I was on the road like 40 weeks, I think, of the year, just traveling into sales offices and doing what like round tables. And then I set up weekly calls for my credit and collections team. My collectors and my credit analysts had calls with the sales force in the local markets to just do touch base once a week, see how things were going, talk about the areas of exposure. So I think those are all techniques you could use.
So just showing them basically, if you can't incentivize them or negatively incentivize them to do something, then at least share the knowledge.
Yep.
And let them know what's going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense. Did you ever do anything like reporting out on their accounts, on their book of business, and be like, here's the uncollected for your accounts. Thank you very much, Bob or Sue or whoever.
So yes, in a tactful way,
Right.
I made sure to do quarterly director reporting as well as end of year reporting, where I highlighted our automatic percentages. I highlighted bad debt. I highlighted our exposure and our recovery. So we were able to even track beyond if it went bad debt and we were able to recover it. I reported back on our recoveries the following year. And that was really eye-opening. And I think, again, with our top of our organization, early in my career, the message was we want to grow. We want to be this really cool culture and environment. We want to go on these cool trips, but we need to have the cash to do so. And having the cash to do so doesn't just mean billing out that revenue, but collecting it. So, it really came from the message from the top, as well as if somebody did not agree with me, they would escalate above me. And I'll tell you, 9.5 times out of 10 that it was a full support on what I was recommending. But my idea was to not have that combative relationship, but to kind of make that decision together.
Sure. Yeah, you don't want that. So another question here, how long does this take, this relationship? So I'm assuming if you come into a relationship, an organization, somebody's newer in an organization, or they want to start, maybe they've been there for 20 years and they want to start. And I'm just totally expounding on this to kind of give some flesh out to this question. But how long can somebody expect for something to start? We know it's not going to happen next week. But what's an average timetable, do you think, for this type of thing that you've seen in the past to actually start to where you start seeing sales and credit/collections kind of working together?
I'm going to be honest. I think it's probably a 6 to 12 month full heart, move the ship or turn the boat around. But, you can see the impact, especially when you sit down with your credit and collections professionals. And you have to have like this pep talk with both sides, right? So you have to have your director sit down. And I literally looked at my credit and collections team and I was like, listen, we need them so that we have stuff to collect on. We need to be able to bill customers. We need to bring on customers. And if we all want to move forward in our careers and we want to have, great opportunity, we are going to continue to have customers and we're going to continue our salespeople. But what we can do is take it as an opportunity to teach them so that when they're onboarding new salespeople or they're training new salespeople or moving up in the company, I have them as a champion and a supporter. And I started this conversation today with saying they're my biggest fans and biggest supporters today. That's still the case. They're people I can call on and have called on me and shared their wins. And I equally get to share in their success. And I think it's having that conversation with that side and then the same conversation with sales, which is we need to collect our cash. We want to be able to pay you. We want to be able to bonus you and give you incentive trips, but we need to make sure we have the money to do so. Let's work together to now figure out how to do that. And I'll leave you with the sales is revenue creation, credit and collections, revenue assurance. And if everybody goes in with that mindset, it can be super magical.
Very nice. Say that one more time so that everybody catches it because we're running up against time here. So say that last part again so they catch it.
Yeah, absolutely. Sales is revenue creation and credit and collections is revenue assurance. And the magic of those two working together can be really special.
Awesome. Katie, as always, it's been a pleasure. I'll give you one shot to do a little shout out. You've done some shout outs for Credit Safe here that have been great for us. So we'll, and you've come on here for free. So, I mean, hey, we love that too, because we don't pay our webinar guests. So, it's helpful. It's a great thing here. But how do folks find you? How do folks get more? How can they get in touch with you if they have questions beyond this, if they have a question tomorrow or what have you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am an independent consultant. You can find me on LinkedIn, Katie Keach. I am putting together a virtual roundtable that's, what's next in B2B post-COVID. So stay tuned for that, June 2nd. And Credit Safe, I think, is also participating, which I'm excited about. So yeah, there's a lot of great information out there. Happy to have side conversations anytime.
Awesome. And we will make sure to link to Katie's info as well in that email. And if you go to any of our previously recorded webinars and everything on our pages, all the speakers are always linked. So if nothing else, it's definitely to their LinkedIn or what have you. So we want to thank you guys so much. I do want to let you know we have one other webinar coming up this week. It is multi-generational shifts in the workplace. And I understand that doesn't always seem the most credity thing that we do, but we are super fortunate to have Gabrielle Boucher coming in with us. She is a 3-time New York Times bestseller. She has done a TED Talk, so a couple of TEDx. She's been on every news agency out there talking about the differences between generations and how that plays into business and the work environment. And she's going to be talking about how different generations of workers are dealing with COVID, how to expect them to be when they come back to work, quote unquote. All of those type of things, as well as how to have a really good succession plan as you move, whether it's moving positions or move out of the company or out of the workforce and having folks ready to take over for you. So she's got some great stuff. She's a really engaging speaker and a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to having her here on Thursday, same time, 2 p.m. Eastern, and she'll be here Thursday the 21st with us. Thanks so much, guys, for always being with us. You will get an email within the next couple of days that will have all the information, the recording of this webinar, all that stuff in there. And Katie, once again, one last thank you. I've got a few thank yous coming in on the questions. So just a thank you from the whole group here.
Oh, thank you guys so much. Appreciate you listening. Thank you to Credit Safe.
All right, folks, have a great rest of your day.